Alright class, today we're going to start chapter 6. Chapter 6 is all about rational exponents and roots and other things like that. And so today, section 6.1, we're going to evaluate some roots. So far you know about a square root. A square root like square root of 16. You know what the square root of 16 is. It is 4. Why? Because 16 is 4 squared. That's why we say 4 is the square root of 16. Okay, now today we're going to look at something more roots than squares, like cube roots or to the 4th roots, something like that. So 16 also has other roots besides 4. 4 is a square root, but 2 is also a root of 16. Because 2 to the 4th power is 16. So that means 2 is a root of 16. Let's see. Let's go with 27. 27 is the same as 3 to the 3rd power. What this means is 3 is a root of 27. What type of root? That's what this tells you. Okay? This tells you the type of root it is. See right here? 4 is a square root of 16. 3 is a cubed root of 27. 2 is a 4th root of 16. So on, so on. So we're going to deal with more roots today. So here's what we say. If some number to the n power is equal to a, just like we have up here, then b is an nth root of a. Alright, so a little bit about roots here. Now we can also write it like this. Let's see, you know this as a square root. Why? Because this number in here, inside right here, is supposed to be a 2. That's why you said this is a square root. But we could also do this cubed. See that number right there? That makes this what we call a cube root. This radical means root. You know that. And this number right here tells you what type of root. So this radical with no root, which we're implying 2, that's why we call it a square root, this cube root, and we could just keep going. 4th root, 5th root, so on, so on. Okay, so there's how we name them. So if I wanted to say, what is the cubed root of 8? You could type that in your calculators if you wanted to. Just hit the math key and you'll see this right here, the cube root sign, and you'll get 2, because 8 is the same as 2 cubed. That's why 2 is a cubed root of 8. Now when you write out some roots, like we'll say the cube root of 27, this thing right here is called the index. Know that term right there? Some vocab. And you can also write all roots as something else. You could write it as 27 to the 1/3 power. So instead of writing the radical, we could also write radicals as powers. So notice the root goes in the denominator. Okay, just watch, like the square root of 9. Okay, that is equal to the same thing as saying 9 to the 1 over whatever the root was, which is 2. 9 to the 1/2. And you know the answer to that. 9 to the 1/2 is 3, or square root of 9 is 3. Cube root of 27 is also 3. So these two things are the same thing. These things right here are called rational exponents. And rational exponents are just another way to write roots, basically. So let's do some problems. Okay. Here we go. Find the indicated roots. Example 1. So letter A. What is the cube root? That's what n is saying. N is the root. Okay. What is the cube root of negative 216? So basically what you want to do is you want to say, okay, 3 means root, so I'm going to put 3 right here, and then negative 216 underneath the root. Now, some properties you need to know about roots. I would look in your book on page 414, the key concept, and it tells you a bunch of things. Now, some people might think, oh, negative underneath the radical, that can't happen. But since we're taking the cube root, that can happen. Okay? You could type this in your calculator, but I advise you right now, at this moment, I wouldn't rely on the calculator right now. Later on, you can, definitely. But what is negative 216 the same as? Okay? What is negative 216 the same as? Think about that for a minute. That's the same as negative 6 to the third power. So what does that mean to you right here? I mean, do you see something that we just learned a minute ago? If you have something to a power, right? You have b to the n equals some number. This number is the root of this number. Okay? So negative 6 is a root of that number right there. What root is that? It's the cube root. Okay? That's what you see up here. The cube root of negative 216. What multiplied 3 times gives you negative 216? That answer is negative 6. That's your final answer. Because negative 6 cubed gives you negative 216. Alright, letter B. N equals 4, so that's the fourth root of 81. So basically, here's what you want to ask yourself. What to the fourth power gives you 81? Okay, that's the same thing over here. What to the third power gives you negative 216? Negative 6. What to the fourth power gives you 81? And you could probably take a guess on that. Once again, don't rely on your calculator yet. Alright? But if you think about it, 81 is the same as 3 to the fourth power. Okay? So the fourth root, a root of 81 is 3. Okay? 3 is the fourth root of 81. Okay, so there's your answer right there. But you need to know something else about roots. If this number is even, then you're going to have 2 answers. Actually, I mean, think about this for a second. If what to the fourth power gives you 81? That's what I asked myself, right? And I thought of 3. But is there anything else to the fourth power that gives you 81? Yes. Negative 3 to the fourth power also gives me 81. So technically, my answer has to be plus or minus 3. So we're going to understand that there. So when you have an even root or an even index out here, a lot of times, or almost all the time, you're going to have 2 answers right here, a plus or a minus. Now I'm gonna go off here and show you an example where that won't happen. So let's do one more where it would. What is the fourth root of 16? So what to the fourth power gives me 16? Well, 2. But what also to the fourth power gives me 16? Negative 2 also to the fourth power gives me 16. So the answer is plus or minus 2 for this. But here's an example where it wouldn't. What is the fourth root of, let's see, negative 16? What's that equal to? Is there anything to the fourth power that give you negative 16? Will negative 2 to the fourth power give you negative 16? No. It'll give you positive 16, right? So here's the deal. if you have an even index right here, and this number is negative, there are no real roots to this answer. Okay? So if this number's even and this number's negative, it can't happen, right? If I asked you, what is the square root of -9? This is the same exact idea. This is even, this is a 2, and this is negative underneath. Nothing times itself will give you -9, so this is also no real answer, no real roots here. Okay? So just pay attention, always pay attention to the index. If it's even, it's going to either have 2 answers, like this one right here, or if it's negative underneath here, then it's going to have no answers. So it's basically going to have 2 answers, no answers, or here's one case where it'd have 1 answer, the 4th root of 0. Well, there's 0 to the 4th root. That's only one answer, 0, right? So you could have 2 answers for an even index. You could have no answers for an even index. You have to pay attention to when. Okay? Alright, next thing about rational exponents. Okay. Now I told you that this, cubed root of a, or 9, or whatever you want to say, is the same as a to the, and remember, 1/3 power. Now, also, what if I have a to the m over n? That's equal to something. So know this idea right here. So if you have rational exponents, that means there's roots. Okay, so a to the m divided by n means something like this. You just have to fill in the blanks. Remember I told you the root or the index goes on the bottom. So that guy right there on the bottom, that is your index always. So that number will go right there. Now, a will go inside. And the m is basically just your exponent. So you could have m right here. That's one way to look at this. Or there's one more way. The n still goes on here. The a still goes here. But we could actually, instead of putting the m underneath, we could actually put the m outside as an exponent as well. This is a key concept. Know it well. Okay? If you have a to the negative m over n, you guys remember what negative exponents do? That means, negative exponent means reciprocal, so that means 1 over a to the m over n. Notice it just switched. Remember, it flipped. Okay? And 1 over a to the m divided by n is the same as, you could split it apart and say 1 over a to the 1 over n, if you like to think of it like that, and then to the m. Okay? And a lot of times you'll just be kind of translating from rational exponents back into roots. So what is a to the 1 over n? Well, that's the same thing as the nth root of a to the m power. So get comfortable with going from rational exponents back into radical form. Okay, switch forms. Be able to do that. All right, let's do some examples. All right, evaluate 16 to the 3 halves and 32 to the negative 3 halves. Here we go. Let's write it out to see what it looks like. 16 to the 3 halves means the square root. You don't have to put that. 16, and then I like to put the exponent outside to the third. Okay? Now you can do this all in your head. Please don't rely on the calculator yet. Square root of 16, you know, is 4. And all you have to do is 4 cubed. You can do that in the calculator. 4 times 4 times 4 gives you 64. So 16 to the 3 halves is 64. Fairly easy, right? 32 to the negative 3 fifths. Well, negative exponent just means reciprocal, so 1 over 32 to the positive 3 fifths. is the same as, I like to go from rational exponent back into radical form. So the 5 is the index, 32 is on the inside, and then you could put the 3 wherever you want it. You can put it in here, or I like to put it out here because it works out better sometimes. Equals 1 over the 5th root of 32. So what to the 5th power gives me 32? 5th root of 32, the root of it is 2. And then you still have the 3rd power out front, which final answer, 1 over 2 to the 3rd is 8. So 32 to the negative 3/5 is 1/8. Okay? And you could try that in your calculator. In your calculator, you would put 32 and hit that caret key, and then make sure you put parentheses when you do rational exponents. You put negative 3 divided by 5, enter, and you'll get a decimal. You can hit math frac, but be able to do it by hand. Okay? We're going to solve equations using nth roots. We skipped example 3. Example 3 is just typing in the calculator, which you can read your book, or we'll come back to that. But solving equations, here we go. If you want to solve for x, obviously get x by itself, so first step, divide by 4. Divide by 4, so we got x to the 5th equals, what, 32. Alright, now, x to the 5th equals 32. How do you get x by itself? You can't divide by x to the 4th or anything like that. Well, think about it. If it was, remember x squared? Well, x squared equals whatever, 9. What did you do? Since it was x squared, you took the square root. Same idea here. How do you get x to the 5th to be x? Well, the 5th root of x to the 5th is equal to x. But if you take the 5th root of this side, you have to take the 5th root of that side, which is just 2. Now, do you get plus or minus answer here? No, because look at the index. The index is odd, so therefore we won't get plus or minus answer. I mean, if you think about it, 2 to the 5th is 32, but negative 2 to the 5th is not equal to 32. It's equal to negative 32. That's why there's not going to be a plus or minus 2 here. Just a positive 2. So there you go. X equals 2. You just solve the equation, put it back in just to check, and yes, it works out to be 128. Okay, example number 5. Little biology problem. A study determined the weight in grams of a coral cod near Palawan Island, the Philippines, can be approximated using that model. So it's nice when they give us an equation. Where L is the coral's length in centimeters, estimate the length of a coral cod that weighs 200 grams. So the question is basically just saying the cod weighs 200 grams. There it is. There's the weight you're looking for. Estimate the length. So it's actually kind of easy. You just plug it in. So there's what they gave us. They told us the weight was 200. Substitute it. There we go. So the question is, how are we going to solve for L? Well, get L by itself. So get rid of this by dividing by 0.10167. And there we go. L cubed is 11,096. How do you get L by itself? Well, that's a cube, so we have to cube root it and cube root it. Once you do that, now in your calculator, you'll see a cubed root button underneath your math key. So underneath math, look for this button. Also, if you want to take any other root, you just look for this button. There's an X there. Underneath the math key, you'll see an X here. That means you can take any root you want to take. So if you want to take the 5th root of 32, here's what you want to do. You type in the 5 first. Then you go get this underneath the math key. And then you type in 32, hit parenthesis, and then you hit enter. And the 5th root of 32 you'll see is 2. So that's how you type it in the calculator right here. You have to type in the root first and then get the radical. Okay? So type that in your calculator. The cube root of 11,976 is 22.9 approximately. So what does that mean? We were looking for the length of the cod. So 22.9 centimeters long, or 23 they rounded up to. Okay, so that's how we're using roots to solve equations, to solve word problems. Understand this roots term. It's going to be throughout the whole chapter and actually longer for the rest of the time. So make sure you guys study up on that. Read the section, read the key concepts, please. All right.